Hello and welcome to this interview that is all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to lay a strong foundation for health and happiness in our teenage girls. Today's interview is with Connie Sobczak. Connie is a mentor, writer, and educator and award-winning video producer. Her experience with a eating disorder in her teen years and the death of her sister Stephanie inspired her life's work to create a world where all people are free to love their bodies. Connie is the author of Embody, which is all about learning to love your body and quiet that critical inner voice. She is a leader in the movement to prevent eating problems and improve self-image of youth and adults through her writings, workshops, and leadership programs. Hello, Connie, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
That's my pleasure, Edwina. Thank you so much.
So I would love to start with hearing your story about how you came to be doing the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. So as you heard in my bio, I had an eating disorder in my teen years. It started, I started really disliking my body around the age of 12. I was younger than most of my peers in my grade, and so I was kind of turned into a follower. And everybody that I knew, all the girls that I was friends with, were dieting. And so that was a big influence. But I think that one of the major influences came from home. And at the dinner table, my father would really pick at my sister Stephanie, who was my oldest sister, and she was very big. She was 5, almost 6 feet tall. She was just a really big person naturally. And looking back, I see that probably during her teen years, she began binge eating because she felt so much shame and about the size of her body and didn't really fit in. And so my dad would really make comments about the food she was eating. Do you know how many calories are in that, Stephanie? Are you sure you want to eat that? And so I would sit across the table from her, and I was this scrawny little prepubescent child. And I'm small too. I'm shorter, and my other sister called me the runt of the family, and all that. That's what I was teased about. But I watched that, and combined with all my friends, their fear of fat and food, I realized I never wanted my dad to talk to me like that. And so I started really dieting in earnest. Stephanie went to Weight Watchers, and as 95% of people do, she lost the weight and gained it back, plus more. And then she became bulimic. Independently of her becoming bulimic, one of my friends taught me about bulimia as well. This is in the 1970s when there wasn't really even a word for it. So I didn't know that anything was wrong with it. It was a very normalized behavior in my friend group to binge and purge together. And so that really, for me, I got lost in it. So bulimia became a really big part of my life. I moved away from home. I started college, and I couldn't stay in school. I kept dropping out thinking something was wrong with my major. And so I would change. I was going to be an engineer. I was planning to really dive into the computer industry. I was very excited about it. I'm one of the few women in the field. But the eating disorder really knocked me out. And so I kept going back, changing my major. And finally, after several years of doing that, I realized something wasn't quite right. And so I left school. I changed my friend group. I changed the partner I was with, who had been poking my thighs saying, you're soft, should you go running? And so I kind of left this whole community and formed a new community. And really on my own got through my eating disorder. I'm a fighter. I dug deep for that life force, and I had some incidents happen that made me realize that I really was not wanting to be on the planet, and that scared me. And so I went, I want to live, and I really want to live, and this isn't living, having this eating disorder. So I fought my way through, and then I went back to school, and I got my degree in psychology, my bachelor's degree, and then was planning to become a therapist, but ended up doing somatic work. So I was a body worker and worked with people, mostly women, around body image through my hands. And what I realized was that my hands were this very non-judgmental mirror so they could see their beauty and their body image and the preciousness of their bodies. And I noticed people really starting to make changes in their lives and becoming more empowered. And I started having this feeling like I needed a bigger audience. But during this time, backtrack a little bit, my sister Stephanie also got breast implants. And one of them hardened. 2 doctors took their forehands and crushed the breast, and silicone leaked into her bloodstream. And she developed an autoimmune disease, lupus, that nobody diagnosed for a really, really long time, until she was in her 30s. And at that point, it was too late. She never got over her eating disorder, so she was malnourished, and finally her body gave out when she was 36, and that's when she died. So at that point, I'd had a baby girl already, and she was a year old, and when my sister died, I just knew that there was no way anything would ever happen to Carmen, that she would get to grow up loving herself and loving her body. And I just knew that I had to change the world. And that was the beginnings of the Body Positive. So that's how I got where I am. And
yeah. So many of our adventures when we want to take on these big movements, it's like we have to go through these experiences to get the empathy to make the change. And exactly. I hear this over and over again, people's traumas as they're growing up, but then they turn into something really powerful. So yeah. Thank you for doing the work you're doing.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's been 22 years, and my co-founder, Elizabeth Scott, is a psychotherapist. And so my idea in the beginning was to work with teenagers and plant seeds through videos and making videos of teens talking to teens. And so that's what we did in the early years. And then Elizabeth was working in a school, and so she was connected with a lot of girls who wanted to do leadership work. And so we formed our leadership program that's grown astronomically since then. Now we work with all genders, all ages, professionals, students, educators, pretty much activists, anybody who wants to create a body positive environment in their community. So we have this really beautiful curriculum that they can use, and we train them, and that part's been just amazing. So people all over the world now are actually using our curriculum and have been trained by us. And so now it's just spreading, and the world is changing in the way I wanted to see because of the people taking our work and taking it into their communities.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm just thinking, I wish that program was happening in the schools where my girls are going to school.
Well, let's get us to there. Yeah. I have friends in Australia, so I would love to. They're body positive already, so
fantastic. All right, so let's start with, what are the first steps? I know that I've had a massive journey with how I've seen my own body, and it just, now I'm going to be 46 in a few days. And I look back and I can remember when my first child was born, who's now 18, and at the time thinking I was so fat, and there was people wanting to take photos all the time because I had this new baby. And I look back on those photos now and I think, what on earth was I thinking? How do we have such distorted ideas about what our bodies look like? So how do we start that thought process with our teenage girls now, Connie?
Right. So it does start with us. So I look back and I see that my dad had body dysmorphia. He didn't like his own body, and he thought he was fat. He was a very thin man, and he was concerned about his own body and also talked about women's bodies. So looking at our own lives and remembering that we are our children's primary role model. Yeah. And from that point, I also want to say, it's really hard as a parent. You can have the best body image in the world, and that doesn't mean that your child will, because there's also the social environment. Like I had school as well. So even if my father hadn't done that, there's a good chance that I could have developed my eating problems because of my focus on my peers. So, but I do believe that making comments about our own bodies in front of our daughters is something that can cause great harm. One of the things that I hear a lot from the young people I work with, and I've worked with thousands of them, one of the main things is, yeah, my mom didn't necessarily say things about my body, but she talked about her own body in a very disparaging way. And then I looked at hers and saw mine, and then that just made me feel like I should have a problem with myself because I have her body, or, you know, I look like her or something. Or moms are smaller than their daughters, and because of genetics, and so the mom who's smaller saying, oh, I'm so fat, or I'm this or that, and the daughter's thinking, oh, you know, what am I then?
Yeah.
And then direct comments, any comments about our children, I just shut the bleep up, you know, is what I was going to write a book and call it, because we really need to keep our mouths shut.
Yeah.
I have a friend who says, keep my mouth shut, KMMS. And I think with our daughters, it's really, really important, that desire to want to say something to them about something. But there are so many times when just being silent or asking a question instead, how are you doing and how are you feeling? And having it be nothing about the way they look or what they're doing or eating, but just making that connection with them, because then that's a way that they can start exploring what their struggles are.
Yeah. I hear that, and in my mind, I'm very aware of the guidance to not talk about our girls' looks, and yet my girls have often, confronted me with very specific questions. Mum, I feel I'm so ugly, and ignoring that is also feels like not an option. So
you don't, if they bring it up, you don't ignore it. I'm saying don't be the one to say, honey, maybe you don't want to wear that. That's making your butt look too big. Are you sure you want to do that? Are you like my dad? Are you sure you want to do that? Yeah. If they come and say, I'm struggling, please be there, answer and sit. But saying, oh, you're not, isn't going to do any good.
Yeah.
But where did you get that idea? What's causing you to feel like something's wrong with your body? And what I do and talk about is like taking it into a larger context. Why do you think you're not alone? Because they think they're alone. They think they're the only ones that are ugly or don't, or fat or whatever it is that they have their thing about, or their hair or their face or their skin or whatever it is. If we can get them to see the larger context of women don't like their bodies all over the world, what is going on? What are the social forces that are causing this? Then we can bring them out of that isolation. Yeah. But just sort of starting with, where did you get that idea?
Yeah.
What did someone say that to you? What's causing you to feel that way? And start asking more questions, and then letting them talk without trying to fix it necessarily.
Yeah, that's a hard one for us mums, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm a mom. I know.
I just want to put a Band-Aid on everything, every little pain.
Someone told me, it was a beautiful statement, we can only be as happy as our most unhappy child.
Oh, yes. And I also know the opposite in, with spending so many years as a single mum, I knew when I was struggling, the kids would struggle twice as much.
Yes.
We're
very connected.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So when you talk about saying, where did you get that idea from? It's everywhere, isn't it? In the social media, in the TV and the movies they're watching, that constant messaging that just enforces reasons to be dissatisfied with our bodies and our looks is there. How on earth do we start to address and combat that?
So again, I don't think as a parent you can do it alone. This is why we build body positive communities in schools, because when the message comes from their peers, so if they have a friend who's saying, I'm not buying that, I'm going to choose to love myself, I'm going to be the rebel by saying I love myself, right? So kids want to be rebellious, kids want to be different. And if we can say conforming by hating myself is what everybody's doing, then maybe loving myself or doing the work to love myself is something different. And so, but a lot of that comes from peers. And I know that's hard to say, but how can we create body positive environments in their schools? So we are going to be building online facilitator trainings that will be starting next year. Right now we have courses that people can start taking, but getting the school environments and getting the teachers to understand that this is a really important topic as well. The other thing I did with my daughter was I took her on lots of field trips, especially from middle school and high school. So I'd be driving girls all over the place. And so I would always do media literacy when we went by billboards. Now my daughter's 26 now. So 10 years ago, all the billboards were all fashion things. Now they're all technology, which is fascinating. But I would talk about things. I would just sort of bring up a question. So when they're, whenever you can, kind of just bringing something up and making a conversation, or you're in the grocery store and you see all the magazines that are, telling you that you have to be thin, and just be like, what is the message here? What is this, especially when they're a little bit younger, what does this make you feel like when you see this kind of thing? Or let's do something fun and cover that up with a food magazine, or let's cover it up with a political magazine. And I don't want to look at that. I talk out loud a lot. So I would say things like, I'm not going to look at that, image that's making me feel like I'm supposed to hate myself while I'm standing and spending my money. Let's cover it up. And so that was something I did a lot that my daughter had to deal with me doing. So yeah, it's tricky. So I don't want parents to feel like they have to do it perfectly, because it takes a community. This is we have 5 competencies of our Be Body Positive model, and the 5th one is build community. And so mother-daughter groups, with my book Embody, we have practices in each chapter, and people can have discussions about them, and there's questions and activities to do there. So getting conversation going is really, really important, and the younger they are, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you just give us a breakdown of, perhaps within your book, you talk about having these, sort of step-by-step practices.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an idea of what some of those might look like?
Yeah, so let me just name the competencies of our model, because it's a very holistic model. So the first is reclaim health. And so that's really honoring our ancestors. And this is a piece that really helps children a lot. So even if they're adopted, we come from a whole line of people that go all the way back to the first human. So this body that we have, the amount of body fat we have, where our people came from, this determines what our bodies look like. That's pretty exciting to someone who may be like, oh, one of my ancestors came from across the world. We don't know. So our health is determined mostly by our genetics, not by the size of our body. And so how can we really be the experts of our own bodies? How can we understand health at every size, honor that people come in different shapes and sizes naturally, that thin isn't necessarily healthy for every person. The way we do that is to practice intuitive self-care as our second competency, which is the listening to our bodies. So really understanding what my body needs, not what somebody else's body needs. When I got over my eating disorder, I had to teach myself how to eat again. I had to teach myself how to pull back from compulsive exercise. So finding balance, doing it through trial and error, honoring that we make mistakes, quote unquote mistakes, and learning from them, right? Yeah. So if I eat something and I don't feel well, or if I eat too much, or I don't eat enough, I'm figuring out, oh, I'm really hungry and I waited too long to eat. Now I'm shaky and really angry and screaming at everybody. Oh, I need to eat more regularly, things like that. So especially with children, helping them understand their own bodies, not it's dinner time, you must eat, things like that, or don't eat that because we're going to have that later. So that's listening to the body. So the first is really about mind, shifting mind. The second is listening to the body. The third is cultivate self-love. So this is the heart piece. This is, we can't have trial and error and have error if we beat ourselves up every time we make a quote unquote mistake. Yeah. So building a practice of self-love, self-compassion, understanding that we have purpose and value as a human being just because we're here. So knowing that our suffering is connected to the suffering of all people, that everyone suffers, we're not alone. And this is also that breaking isolation piece. And the fourth is declare your own authentic beauty. Coming back again to the ancestor piece, this body came from who came before me to give me this body? And can we say no thank you to these messages? Can we be creative? My colleague Elizabeth loves to talk about the way we see beauty now is just a failure of imagination. That all of this stuff that we see and think that's what we're supposed to be, if we use our imagination, we can create any definition of beauty we want. When I start my definition with myself, I take myself out of the beauty hierarchy. I'm not comparing myself anymore. Therefore, everybody gets to have beauty. And then the fifth is build community.
Oh, the failure of imagination. I just love that. That is just,
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's,
so the practices in the book are just to bring all of these to life. So we have different activities and exercises to help people think differently and feel differently and practice different things. So it's very interactive.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more about those sort of self-love practices, what that looks like in practice. How can we, start to implement a few of those things?
Yeah. So simply, it comes down to that we experience love or fear, right? So our critical voice is fear. That's all it is fear speaking. And what I've started to see is that fear in me and my critical voice is just like a little child that needs attention. So it's having a tantrum. And when I thought about my daughter when she was 4.5, especially. She had incredible language skills and a huge temper. And so when a tantrum would start to come on, I would feel like, oh, no, I don't want to deal with it. But I didn't turn away from her. I picked her up, like, okay, hi. And I always think of like holding her in this container. That's what self-love is to me. I create a container. She can bump up against it and she can be mad. And I'm still here. I'm listening. What do let's work through this. It's okay. You can be mad. You can be sad. Now we're going to cry. Let's skip the beating yourself up part, but what do you need? What's your need right now? And then that, and then the conversation would start. And so I do that with myself. So when my critical voice comes up, I imagine that little 4-year-old, and I'm like, because most people want to push their critical voice away or run from them or beat them, but they don't go away and they just scream louder. So I turn toward my critical voice and I say, hey, what's going on? And usually something's going on outside of my control and that I've turned on myself. And so I listen to the voice, and we do a practice it's complex, but it's very simple. So I hear the voice and I say, okay, what do you want? Well, I want you to be perfect in whatever way it is, or I want you to never stop working, or I want you to, in many people's eyes, it might be, I want you to lose, X number of pounds or blah, 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 to be, or, because you're ugly or this or that. That's, the critical voice, right? And then it's like, okay, I hear you. How would you feel if you got what you wanted? So this is the part where we're actually finding out why that critical voice came in the first place, which is really trying to help us in some way. But how can we bypass the mean, nasty part and find out what quality it is that I'm missing in my life? So it might be, I would feel accepted. I would feel loved. I would feel beautiful. I would feel, worthy, all these thing. And so how would you feel, right? So you're trying to find out what they feel. How would you feel if you got what you wanted? How would you feel if and you're talking to the critical voice, if I perfected myself, me, Connie, in this way that you want me to, how would you feel? Well, I would feel worthy. Okay, so worthy is what I really need right now. I need to feel worthy. Why am I not feeling worthy? What's going on in my life that's causing? And I can usually pinpoint something. I didn't get a grant, or someone rejected us for our nonprofit. That's usually lately what it is. Something that makes me feel like, but I would instead of turning it on myself, I can say, wow, now let's talk about all the ways I'm worthy. And let's stay with that. And that's going to be my meditation for however long until the next one comes up and I need something else. So it's hard for people because they get looped into the critical voice. But this is an activity that we do at our workshops with people and really work them through it. But it is in the book, and it's worth working on. And I always know when I get to the quality that I really need, that my critical voice is trying to get me to, which is I can go, oh, it's a life enhancing quality, not something that's going to drive me further or accentuate my critical voice.
Yeah. I just think that's enormously empowering, because we all have it. We all
We
have
do.
that little critical voice that
Oh,
is,
yeah.
you know, feels like it's undermining all the time.
Yeah.
And I was actually having a conversation with my husband this morning about something that was going on, and I was like, oh, for goodness sake, just stop. So we all have it. And if we can learn what you're saying in actually not trying to just shut it down, but listen to it.
Right. And we turn it from the enemy into the ally with that, because now when my critical voice comes up, I know something's going on, and so I use it as a mindfulness bell, and I stop. So I don't spend weeks with my critical voice, or days, or even hours. Now I might have it for a while, and I do. I'm not pretending that it's not there, but I work with it, and so I turn it into that ally. Like, oh wow, I'm really suffering in this way or that way, and I really need this or that. I need to feel accepted, or I need to feel validated. I need to feel confident. I need to feel whatever it is. And I've heard everything come up from people. It's so beautiful to sit in a room with people. We actually get people up walking with their critical voices. It's very intense and very painful. But then we move through all the way to the self-love part of it through meditations and different things. And then to watch people walking with their quality, and to be able to say, I am worthy, I am confident, I am beautiful, I am loved, and everyone's looking each other in the eye. And we're taught that we're supposed to be self-deprecating, and it's really damaging the human species.
Yeah.
Especially females.
Yeah. I listen, I often, with 2 teenage daughters, I often have them and their friends in the car, and sometimes I listen to the conversations and I just feel so sad, because they're, so much of the conversation is about, they might be, have year 11 exams coming up, or, I hate my life, this kind of, I try and talk to my girls about the power behind actually expressing things like that out loud or in our heads. And just, it might seem flippant, and that's what everybody's friends are doing, but when we use such defeating language, it's it accumulates, doesn't it? So it has a compounding effect.
It does. I mean, I think in the book The Power of Now, the author talks about the difference between our lives and our life situation.
Yeah.
So my life is my essence. My life is in the moment. My life is in this moment. So I'm riding in the car. I'm not taking my exam right now. I'm riding in the car. I'm with my friends. So I could really look at it like, this is a good moment. Yeah. The life situation is that, tomorrow or whenever I have to do my exam, but that's the future. Mm-hmm. And this whole idea, I think self-love is really about keeping us coming back to the present moment as much as we can. Because we can choose to suffer by going future or going past all the time. But when we come into this place of, this is my life, this is a moment. And I think for me, and I talk to the young people about this too, I have a dead sister because she hated her body. So I had a wake up call at 31 of, I don't know how long I have. I mean, I hope I live to be, 100 or whatever until I'm ready to go. But I want to have as much fun as I can while I'm here, and beating myself up is not fun.
Yeah. Yes. And, the other conversation that I think is so powerful is looking and accepting and loving now, because I know that there's, my mindset for years and years and years was all about, I'm going to be happy when I've lost this much weight, or when I have this job, or when, there's always future based. And so that power of now, that's Eckhart Tolle, is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. He's brilliant. Yeah.
Bringing that conversation and making it really present about the present time is a big key, isn't it?
It is. And I actually recommended the book to my daughter just a couple of years ago. She was struggling with some things and kind of an emptiness at one point, where she had known, had clear goal, everything was clear up until a certain point. And it's been amazing. And she reminds me now of, Mom, that would be like the now. And, it's so fun because she's really got it, and it's been a tool for her as well. So I think that for young people, it's really important for them, because they're also all forced, you know, to look ahead and university and this and that, and then I'm gonna have a job, and then I'm supposed to have a partner, and I'm supposed to do this, and I'm supposed to do that. It's like, yes, and you're also here right now. And I wish someone had told me that when I was a teenager, just to see the beauty of my life and me. I spent my entire teenage years thinking I was ugly and fat and wrong and bad and stupid or whatever it was, you know, all the things. And it breaks my heart for that little person in me.
Yeah. I think if I did a poll of all the women that tune into this summit and asked them if they had the same experience, I sadly think it would be an overwhelming majority. All my girlfriends that I speak to, and you know,
so we have from this point forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so everybody listening, watching, we have now, and this point forward.
Yeah.
So 10 years from now, I'm going to have a whole lot more wrinkles on my body, right? I have them now. There's, you know, I'm in menopause or I'm postmenopausal. So each stage of my life, you know, my body's changing again. I could pick at myself right now. I could absolutely pick at myself as I watch myself age. And doesn't mean I have perfect days every day, but I have decided that I'm here. And this is this moment. And 10 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, yeah, I had less wrinkles when I was 57, you know, or I had, you know, tighter skin or whatever it is, or, you know, fewer gray. Well, I'm going to be completely white haired by then. So,
well, I think that's the power of this summit, is that what we're learning now, and just opening up these conversations as mothers, we can completely change this picture for our teenage girls, because they're in that prime place where the messaging is just so important, isn't it?
It is so important. One thing that happened to me, and I wrote the story in my book Embody, is I was in a dressing room with my daughter when she was just hitting puberty, and her body was just blossoming, you know, and ripening and so beautiful. And I saw the beauty in her, and we're standing in our underwear in the dressing room together side by side. And I was hitting perimenopause at that point. So I was watching kind of gravity, you know, take over. And I had this moment of, I could see ugliness in myself right now, especially in comparison, if I choose to compare. And I stood there and I just looked back and forth, and I thought, whoa, we get to both have beauty. One is a different kind of beauty.
Yeah.
I have this kind of beauty. And I didn't speak. And I also knew in that moment that it would be very easy to say, oh, ugh, in front of her. Yeah. And I didn't. And then we got in the car and we talked about how it is difficult when you're going through transitions with your body, and it's changing, and you have to buy new clothes, and you don't quite know your body, and what looks, you know, good to me on my body, and what feels comfortable, I don't know, you know, and I have to experiment again. But it was interesting because a couple of days after that, my mom was visiting, and at that point, she was probably in her late 70s, early 80s, and she and my daughter were sitting side by side, and I had this moment where they switched. And my daughter was the old woman and my mom was young. And I saw my mom as a young girl, and I saw my daughter as an old woman. And I just went, oh, wow, we're everything. And I'm in between. But we are all of those things.
Yeah.
But we only honor one. So how can we be with our daughters and help by not picking at ourselves is one way to do it, but then also really helping them see the beauty and diversity. And to be not just silent about my aging beauty, but to be like, to celebrate it. Yeah. To say, wow, I love aging. This is so great about aging, or this part of my life, or, oh yeah, you know, look at that. And touching our bodies, touching our bellies, and being not afraid of our flesh in front of our daughters.
Yeah. Well, from my personal experience in my mid-40s, I am happier now than I've ever been. So the aging process is working really well for me.
I'm so glad.
And I just think it's, you know, as we get a bit older, it's just you care less and less what other people think.
Right. It does help.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I wouldn't go backwards for anything. But what I do want to do is help my girls and the girls in my world bypass years of the rubbish that came before. We you know, if we can somehow help them get to this place a bit earlier.
Yes.
How different will their lives look? Enormous.
They will look different. And I can tell you, because I raised my daughter with the body positive, that she never had to go through that I don't like my body. She wasn't always perfectly happy with her hair or, you know, whatever it was. It's not like she didn't struggle at all, but it was a different thing. And she and her friends would get together and they would talk about the differences in their body as they were going through puberty, but they didn't say yours is better than mine and I don't like this about me and I like that about you. They just all went, oh, look, you know, your breasts are bigger and my legs are shorter and this and me and that. But they saw the beauty in each one of them and they honored and celebrated all their beauty in the diverse ways their bodies were forming. And what I've seen is that she got to go to college in such a different way than I did, because she got to focus on her education. She actually became a computer engineer, which was funny. So it kind of came full circle to where I started. And she got to really be with her friends and be a different kind of person with them and teach them just by the way she was in the dorms and in the dining halls. And it was really beautiful to see. So that world that I had hoped to make and change for her did happen. And we can do that. And again, I want to say it's do it in community.
Yeah.
Carmen had the whole body positive community as I was starting the organization, and her babysitters were my peer leaders. And find a way to create body positive community. Have dinners where your women friends come over and have your daughter sit and listen without gadgets and talk. Carmen says all the time, because, you know, things have changed so fast. Now everybody's plugged in all the time, but she had to sit and listen to me talking a lot with other people. And she said, yeah, I was bored sometimes, but I learned so much. And I'm so grateful that that was my life, to be able to sit and listen. So forced listening sometimes isn't such a bad thing, even if they're complaining.
Yeah, well, we have that practice just every night at the dinner table. There's no devices, and we sit down and eat meals together. And I'm just thinking, even last night, you know, there is so many skills that come from that simple practice, that they have to, you know, learn to listen even when it's not the most exciting or entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. You'll thank me later.
Oh yeah, I'm that annoying mum.
Yeah. Oh, there she goes again. She's talking about bodies and this and that. Okay.
I'm happy to give them lots of reasons to roll their eyes. It's my job.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of our interview. Connie, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you feel would be really valuable to share as we wind this up? It's a big question. There's probably 1,000 things.
Yeah. Let's see. I think one of the things that has come up in mother-daughter workshops that I've done is when mothers realize that the way they've been up to this point has maybe possibly damaged their daughters, like by talking about their own bodies or making comments about their daughters' bodies. And then guilt comes up. Yeah. And I would like to really offer to everybody to put the guilt down from this moment forward. And what happened, I have chills actually thinking about that workshop we did, because this one mother-daughter pair, I think the daughter was in middle school, maybe late middle school, and they decided to work together to change. So they bonded over, let's do the work to love our bodies, instead of bonding over, I'm going to pick at myself, you can pick at yourself, or I'm going to pick at you and I'm going to try and reject you because you're hurting me. They decided to, together, they would work to change their body image. Yeah. Yeah. And so guilt doesn't do any good. No. And probably things have happened. A lot of people have said things that they now might regret. So it's okay. Yeah. And do the work on self-love. Yeah.
I think that's been a running theme throughout this interview series, is just that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay not to know. It's all those things are okay. And it's okay to learn alongside our teenage girls. In fact, I think it's probably a really powerful thing to do. Yeah.
And we can say, I'm sorry. I'm also on a crusade to get women to stop saying they're sorry so much for everything. So notice in your own life if you're apologizing for every little thing, because that's such a disempowering thing to do, and especially as a female. But to be able to stand there or say, excuse me, if you bump into somebody, instead of sorry. because I don't want our young girls to be thinking they have to be sorry all the time. So I see that as something that I watch a lot of the young ones that come and work with us as an intern, and, you know, they're just like this all the time, and sorry, or, you know, I'll touch them by accident. I bump into them and they say sorry, and it's like, I bumped into you. You don't have to say you're sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay, you know, step into yourself, be there, take up space. But as the, you know, parent, we can also role model that and talk about it too. That's the other thing I wanted to say. Talk about these things, talk as much as you can, and have those times to connect. And I know that people have struggles with their children at different times, but whenever those moments are there, to really, and if you have young ones, to really keep that communication open right now, which is that open listening, asking questions instead of, you know, pointing fingers.
Yeah, that's perfect. I know you have a free gift for our audience. Connie, did you want to take a minute to tell everyone about that?
Sure. On our website, so thebodypositive.org, there are many body positives now. And that's another thing I'd actually like to say is not everything body positive in the world is related to us, the body positive. We are different than a lot. And so watch out for the mixed messages. Some people might say, you know, be body positive, but, you know, use this product to change your body. So be careful with that. That's double binding messages, mixed messages. But we're thebodypositive.org, and there's a free ebook just right below the photos on the right-hand side. And then another really exciting thing that I'm so happy to share, and I'm working really hard to finish in these next few days with my daughter who's building it for us, is the Body Positive Institute is our new online platform. So you get to be with Elizabeth and me through videos, and we have a lot of worksheets, and it's an introduction to our work in a really beautiful way. I'm very, very excited about it. We have testimonials from people who have, you know, practiced our competencies, so they're talking about how they use them. So it launches on Sunday, the 22nd of April. So I know we're a little ahead of time. So I'd like to extend the 20% discount for one of the courses, or one of the bundles of courses, through this wonderful work that you're doing, Edwina. So that'll be something I can share until you're done with this conference.
Oh, that's absolutely magic. Thank you so much. That's very generous. And I don't doubt that you'll have a lot of takers.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be fun. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It is just such an honor to speak to you and to get a little bit of your wisdom. It's a great gift. Thank you for the work you're doing, Connie.
Thanks for the work you're doing too, Edwina.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.